Hey guys, it's Godbars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and today I wanted to try something a bit special as a thanks to you all for getting me to 1,000 subscribers. Considering I've had some requests to cover my favorite albums on the page, I thought it would be fun if I went down the list of my top 30 favorite projects that I've reviewed so far on the channel. Well, I will be going from worst to best, technically. I obviously love every LP that I'm going to name, and considering I highly enjoy every record that I have in my collection, that should let you know how much reverence I hold for these 30 releases. In fact, it was so hard to trim down, I have to give a handful of honorable mentions. But first, keep in mind that this is a personal favorites list, not a collection of the most impactful and agreed upon classics. And I just wanted to put that out there since I know I'll get comments asking about Illmatic, To Pimp a Butterfly, and the like, which of course I revere and adore like virtually any other hip hop head, but they just didn't ultimately have as much replay value for me personally as these other classics I want to recommend. Plus, I'm restraining myself to one LP per artist, as it would have been pretty much impossible otherwise, and we would have ended up with a really unbalanced list. But getting on to these quick recommendations, some of the amazing albums that just missed the cut include Kanye West's Late Graduation, Prince Paul's Prince Among Thieves, Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique, DMX's It's Dark and Hell is Hot, Mos Def or Yasin Bey's Black on Both Sides, The Notorious B.I.G.'s Life After Death, Atmosphere's God Loves Ugly, Nas's It Was Written, Dr. Octagon's Dr. Octagon Ecologist, Dr. Dre's The Chronic, Tupac or Machiavelli's The Don Illuminati, The 7-Day Theory, Moment of Truth by Gangstar, Since I Left You by The Avalanches, America's Nightmare by Spice One, Redman's Muddy Waters, Queen Latifah's Black Rain, Reasonable Doubt by Jay-Z, Honor Killed the Samurai by the late legend Ka, Sound Pieces to Antidote by Loot Pack, Cloud Dead self-titled debut, Jizza's Liquid Swords, Little Brothers The Minstrel Show, West Side Gun, Supreme Clientele or Chris Benoit, Danny Brown's Triple X, Section 80 by Kendrick Lamar, and On Top of the World by 8Ball and MJG. With those out of the way, we can get on to my main 30, and I'm going to give extremely brief descriptions for each of these picks, mainly due to how I already discussed them all at length, but also because this video is more about just giving you a sense of what kind of hip-hop albums are my personal favorites. Of course, I'll also leave links for all of the projects I rattle off here down in the description below. But starting us off at number 30, we have UGK's 1996 magnum opus Ridin Dirty, where Southern rap titans Bun B and Pimp C perfected their craft and further solidified themselves as the most influential hip-hop duo to ever come out of Texas. Then at 29, I went with the lush and uplifting Below the Heavens by Blue and Exile, which proved a much-needed breath of fresh air back in 2007, when the two West Coast legends took the underground by storm with this jazzy, introspective, and thoughtful piece of hip-hop. Following them at 28, we're staying in California, but winding the clock back a bit and going in the complete opposite direction stylistically, with MC8 and Compton's Most Wanted's masterclass in gangster rap, 1992's Music to Drive-By. Then switching gears to East Coast political golden age hip-hop. At number 27, it's Chuck D, Flava Flav, and the rest of the Public Enemy squad, with their revolutionary third album, 1990's Fear of a Black Planet. After that, for 26, I went with my one Liquid Crew related pick for this list, which is the 1995 sophomore album by the Alcoholics, Coast to Coast. And then at 25, I have Missy Elliott's game-changing, one-of-a-kind debut full-length, 1997 Supa Dupa Fly, where her and Timbaland altered many people's perception of what hip-hop could look and sound like. And this was just the first of many killer collaborations between these two Virginia legends. For number 24, we have a timeless East Coast LP in the form of Havoc and Prodigy of Mobb Deep with their stellar 1996 LP Hell on Earth. And following those guys up at number 23, it's Ice Cube's 1991 masterpiece Death Certificate, which for me was neck and neck with his game-shifting debut from the year prior, America's Most Wanted. But I decided to give his sophomore solo album the edge since I feel like it's just a tad more polished and well executed. Next up, at 22, we have one of the most influential acts to come out of the South in the 90s, even if that influence took a little while to trickle down, which was Memphis's 3-6 Mafia and their innovative 1995 debut Mystic Stylez. And following them at 21, it's Boot Camp Clique's own Helta Skelta, with my favorite release in BCC's Pantheon of Classics, which was Sean P. and Rockness Monster's 1996 breakout album, Nocturnal. At number 20, we're going over to the Soulquarian collective and movement, with Common's stellar turn-of-the-century masterpiece Like Water for Chocolate, which dropped in the year 2000. And after him, for 19, I went with one of the most forward-thinking LPs and groups in southern 90s rap music, with Goody Mob's insightful top-of-the-line debut Soul Food. Next up, at number 18, I have an album that you don't normally see ranked this high amongst these other classics, which is insane to me because, as I've mentioned many times in the past, I absolutely adore Diplomatic Immunity, the first official album from Dipset, aka the Diplomats as a group, which absolutely took over New York in 2003 when it came out, due to infectious samples and highly personable flows, amongst a number of other qualities. From there, we move on to number 17, which is Ghetto Boys with their sinister 1996 LP, The Resurrection, which may not have quite the impact and influence of 1991's groundbreaking We Can't Be Stopped, but personally it ended up getting the nod since I returned to this thing a lot more frequently. Then at 16, we have another act that was discussed very early on in this page's lifespan, that being hip-hop's resident band The Roots, with what in my opinion is arguably their single greatest contribution to the culture, 1999's Things Fall Apart. And at 15, it's the late Harlem icon Big L, with what was tragically the one solo project we got from this dude while he was alive, that of course being 1995's Lifestylez of the Poor and Dangerous. Following him at number 14, it's the only instrumental album that I chose to grace this list, which came from the greatest of all time, Jay Dilla, who changed the art of sampling forever with his 2006 masterwork Donuts. And after that, we have De La Soul at number 13, who divided many of their fans with their updated sound on 1991's De La Soul is Dead. For number 12, we have one of the rarest holy grails in my whole record collection, which also dropped in 2006, that being The Unforgettable Experience, which is a piece of Strange by Cunning Linguists. Then staying in the South, but going back a good decade, at 11, I have my favorite solo album from veteran MC Scarface, 1994's The Diary, which just barely beat out his awesome 2002 LP, The Fix. And finally, breaking into the top 10, at number 10, it's the experimental, futuristic, and technical sophomore full-length by Prince Poe and Pharaoh Monch of Organized Confusion, 1994's Stress, The Extinction Agenda. After them, at number 9, we have a similarly talented duo with lyrics way ahead of their time, as well as unique and innovative ways to deliver them, that being Outkast, who of course have a very high-quality discography packed with gems, but I opted to go with 1998's Aquemini, though tailing right behind it would be 1996's AT-Aliens. Following that classic, at 8, we have an album that really hasn't aged a day sonically or stylistically in the nearly 25 years since its 2001 release, which is The Cold Vein by underground duo Vast Air and Vort Omega, who together form Cannibal Ox. And not only were they handpicked by LP out of the Adams Family Collective to create Canox, but El Producto also did 100% of the production on the Cold Vein. And really the only reason you won't see El's solo debut, Fantastic Damage, on this list, despite being the very first LP I ever covered on the channel, is because I have at least one other pick coming up that was largely masterminded by that legend, and it's a similar reason to why other MCs on my Mount Rushmore like MF Doom or Ghostface Killah aren't more present on this list. It's all just due to the limit I set of one album per artist, with exceptions for certain groups where the solo member had output completely separate from the collaborative work. Next up at number 7, we have one of the most recent releases in this ranking, which insanely is almost a decade old at this point, that being 2015's Today I Wrote Nothing by master wordsmith Billy Woods, another documented personal favorite of mine, who I've long maintained as the single best poet currently in the game, maybe even ever. And while this LP is insanely underrated in his growing discography, it's remained his best work in my opinion to this day. And then after him, coming in at 6, it's one of the most rightfully beloved and impactful groups in the history of the genre, that being the Native Tongue's own A Tribe Called Quest with their absolutely flawless second studio album, The Low End Theory. And of course, while they would manage to hit it out of the park again with the following release in 1993's Midnight Marauders, I had to give it to Low End since that's the project that introduced me to Tribe, and definitely holds the most nostalgia. Plus, as I said earlier, there really isn't a moment resembling a flaw anywhere in sight on this thing, though that could really be said about both. So we're now approaching the final stretch of the video, and at number 5, we have the one other relatively more current choice in this list, and the only modern hip-hop LP that can compete with and even best the Billy Woods magnum opus I discussed a couple spots ago, with even more obscure imagery and a totally idiosyncratic style of writing, which comes from the artist formerly known as Milo, who now goes by the moniker R.A.P. Ferreira, with my favorite album of the last 10 years, hands down, his 2015 collaboration with underground producer and engineer Kenny Siegel titled So the Flies Don't Come. Following him and taking the 4th place spot, this might be a bit of a shock to some, but I'm standing by it as it's just so endlessly dope and replayable to me. And the masterpiece I'm referencing is actually my favorite LP from my favorite Wu-Tang Clan member, that being Ghostface Killah with the unforgettable and highly impactful Supreme Clientele, which came out in the year 2000 and saw RZA handling the production reins once again. Yet, much like Ghost on this album, they were both clearly breaking into new eras of their careers, and were trying to switch things up a bit instead of just sticking to the proven formula that they'd been using. Coming in at number 3, I have that other LP-related project I was referencing a little earlier, which I personally would argue is the most timeless, experimental, and adventurous album that 90s hip-hop blessed us with. Company Flow's mind-blowing 1997 debut, Funcrusher Plus. And if you ask me on a random day, there's definitely a good chance I might say Funcrusher Plus is my favorite hip-hop album, period. But it's number 3 for this list, and at number 2, I'm actually going to cheat a tiny bit by making this spot a tie between 2 LPs, and I know that technically makes this a top 31 and not a top 30, but what you're not considering is Shut Up. The classics I'm having share second place are appropriately both Wu-Tang Clan joints. First, with the collective's debut that birthed the name of this channel, Enter the Wu-Tang or 36 Chambers. And right there alongside it, I have Raekwon's Only Built for Cuban Linx. And the main reason it was so difficult trying to decide between these 10 out of 10 albums is because the Clan's breakout LP is so undeniable with its influence and how it changed the game forever, and I have slightly more of a personal connection to it. On the other hand, Cuban Linx may not have been quite as impactful upon its release, but it sounds so dense, lush, and full, Plus, every aspect of their music was rapidly improving at this point, from lyricism and their grimy boom bap beats, to concept tracks and skits that tell a story, and the chemistry between Ghost and Ray as MCs. And following those two must listens, we are now at my number one for this list of my 30 favorite albums I've reviewed on the channel so far, and really just my favorite album in the history of hip hop, which I'm sure many of you guys will have seen coming, since it isn't exactly an unpopular or contentious pick nowadays. However, this has been my golden standard for rap music ever since I initially heard it, and it's why the first tattoo I ever got was of the mask. Because besting every other classic in my collection, we have the iconic one and done 2004 LP Madvillainy. From debatably the greatest rapper-producer duo to ever step in the game, MF Doom and Madlib, aka Quasimodo, who together as Madvillain created one of the most unique, creative, and layered pieces of art you can find in modern music for my money. And with that, we are now closing out the end of this 1,000 subscriber special. So again, I wanted to thank you guys for supporting me and getting me to this place. And I hope this top 30 favorite albums video was enjoyable and gave you some insight into my personal taste. Anyways, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite albums in this list were, as well as if there's any classics you would have had on here instead, which I'm sure you guys won't hesitate to inform me of. So thank you once more, and don't forget to have a great day, okay? Alright, times 1,000.